Crumpton, this is Bloomberg. Jason?
Thank you so much, Mark. Turning now to the Russia probe. Robert Mueller and Paul Manafort are expected to update a judge within 10 days about President Trump's former campaign manager cooperating in that Russia investigation. President Trump, maybe not surprisingly, targeted Mueller in a series of tweets, calling the investigation, quote, a total mess, and says the special counsel's, quote, found no collusion and has gone absolutely nuts. Our next guest knows the probe firsthand as a member of the House Intelligence Committee. Let's welcome Democratic Congressman from Washington, Denny Heck. Congressman Heck, great to see you. So let's start there. What happens next from your perspective? What should people be looking for as we get another step along the Mueller investigation?
Well, everybody's kind of walking on eggshells around here waiting for the Mueller report to drop or the next series of indictments. I think the latter is virtually inevitable at this point. I don't have eyes on the Mueller work, Jason. We specifically have firewalled their very secretive work from ours at the Intelligence Committee. But look, after plea deals with Paul Manafort, plea deal with Michael Cohen, an immunity grant to the CFO of the Trump Organization, Mr. Weisselberg, it seems at this point almost inevitable that there will be additional indictments. In fact, what I've said for quite some time is it wouldn't surprise me if there were not already indictments under seal, but we have just been in the quiet period, as it were, leading up to the election, and now Director Mueller may feel free to step forward now with his work to date.
Well, and given what we have heard from the president, you know, both in press availabilities as well as those tweets that we just mentioned, what are the conversations you're having with your colleagues on the Republican side about potentially some legislation to protect that investigation? Is there a willingness on the part of some Republicans to step in and do that? How does that move forward?
Precious little. Obviously, when the majority leader of the Senate reiterates repeatedly that there's no need to provide protection to Director Mueller, it's a strong signal to all Republicans, both in the Senate and the House, that he's not going to be moving forward on it. The question really is as the pressure builds, will there be a change of hearts and minds? That remains to be seen, but there's absolutely nothing in the record for the last 2 years that suggests that Senate majority Republicans or now House minority Republicans would be willing to stand up to this president and exercise their Article I constitutional responsibility to provide a check and a balance.
Well, you mentioned sort of implicitly the new majority coming in for the Democrats into the House. So let's talk about
I thought it was pretty explicit, Jason.
Well, fair enough. So let's talk about that. It's sort of amazing, you know, sitting here to think it was just a little over a week ago that midterm election happened. Let's talk about leadership going forward from here. There's been a lot of chatter down there about whether Nancy Pelosi will indeed get the speakership a second time. What's your feeling on that? Are you behind Representative Pelosi, or do you think it's time for fresh blood?
Well, first of all, the election's not over with. Yesterday, we had another House Democratic candidate in California. Katie Porter declared the winner, defeating incumbent Mimi Walters. And Gil Cisneros, running for the open seat of retiring Congressman Ed Royce, has now pulled ahead for the first time and is on a straight path. So this election isn't over with. We continue to pick up seats, and there are other left-to-be-called district races underway as well, Jason. But look, our internal deliberations will be over with in 12 days. Now and later, what House Democrats are focused on is what we were focused on during the campaign. What is it that we can do with our newfound responsibility to lower prescription drug prices, to protect people with pre-existing conditions, to get serious about substantial investment in our nation's crumbling infrastructure? That's what we are focused on. That's what unites us, and that's what we're all very excited and eager to get to work on.
So are you Team Pelosi at this moment? What do you think?
Yes, I've publicly announced that I support her. I always am bemused by the question, however, because it seems to me to be a moot point. She doesn't have an opponent. But yes, I have announced my support for soon-to-be Speaker Pelosi.
Very good. Let's talk about Facebook for a second, because this obviously is within your purview, especially given some of the recent headlines around Facebook. What needs to happen from your perspective, from a regulatory or legislative perspective, to address some of these issues facing Facebook?
Well, first of all, I would characterize what happened over the last a couple of years as Facebook having dropped the ball miserably. When they finally did act, too little and too late along the way, they also engaged in some pretty bad behavior. You know, most Americans, Jason, really believe in a market-based economy. They want to reward innovation and hard work and people who build a better mousetrap, but they have deep, deep concerns about growing multinational corporatism, which puts the objective of growth at any cost over all else. They want a market-based economy, but you know what else they want? They want corporations who are committed to the community as well. In this case, we're talking about the community writ large, namely America, which was under attack and which Facebook did nothing to protect us from. So if they don't step up much more aggressively, yes, I confidently predict that we on the policymaking side will get involved. I don't know what that looks like. In fact, it's a little bit of a dicey trail. It's tough to figure out exactly how to do that. But I know this, if they don't exercise some sense of community responsibility, then there will be efforts, and I, again, predict successful, to impose it upon them.
Congressman Denny Hegg joining us from Washington. Thank you so much. Enjoy your weekend back home. Still ahead, shares of PG&E rebounding today after California's